Welcome everybody to Getting to Green. My name is Kevin, and today we're going to be going over, today we're going to be setting up for a project for this series. We're going to be creating a to-do app, something pretty simple, but it allows us to deal with the back end as well as the front end. So we're going to be able to kind of write our own tests and do it that way. Now, what we're going to be using for the back end is a PHP framework called Laravel. Now, they do a lot of setup for us, which is nice, but there's still a couple of things that we're going to have to do in order to get up and running. So this might be kind of a fairly short video, but we're also going to set up the front end stuff for Vue. So we're going to be using Vue.js as our front end. Now, we could set this up as a separate project for the front end and use Laravel as an API only, but we're just going to go through it. Be easier for me. I like easy, so we're going to do it that way. I think later on we're actually going to split them up and have the front end stuff on its own and the back end stuff on its own. But this is just going to be a pretty basic series. So with that being said, let's go and start setting this up. All right, so I'm going to use Composer, create Laravel /Laravel. And we'll just call it to do. Simple, right? So that's the name of the app. So go ahead and hit this, and we're going to let this run, and with some magic, I'll see you in a bit. All right, that finished up, so we can actually open that up. So we can see ls, we have a PHP unit thing. That's something I did on my own, but we see to do. So we're going to cd into that, to do, and we're going to open this up in VS Code. Now again, this is a basic setup for what the Laravel is. Everything's already made for us out of the gate. We have our tests already set up. We have our features, our units, a couple of example tests in there. So this is pretty much a lot of what we need. However, this is Laravel. I think it's version 9. Actually, we could see what it is. I think, was it Laravel? PHP Artisan version. Maybe it's a capital V. So we're on 9.38.0. So this is the newest version of Laravel as of this video. So this comes with a lot of stuff. One of the things that they switched over, I don't know when, but they also started using Vite. So that's something we won't have to pull in ourselves, but we do need a couple other things. We have Laravel, so we're going to use Yarn, and we're going to add for development. Actually, just for regular, we're going to need Vue, so we're going to install that. It shouldn't take too long. All right, so that's finished. So one of the other things we're going to need is the Vue plugin for Vite. So Yarn, add for development. We're going to need at Vite.js /plugin-Vue. We're also going to need Vitest. That's the framework that we're going to be using for this. And I think that'll do it. So we'll just do that. Let that install. And that's done. So to set that up, we're going to need to go into our Vite config, and we're going to import that plugin. So import Vue from @Vite plugin, and after this Laravel thing, we have Vue. I guess it's done like this. And we're going to just set this up. So one of the things that we have to set up is our base. So that's going to be no. And what we also, there. And we need to include absolute path. I'm going to make that false. So pretty much turning absolute path off, and you could read more about this in the Laravel documentation, but what this is going to be is just, it's going to allow us to access our public directory with Vue. So that's kind of nice. It's just how you would normally run any kind of app. Laravel likes to do something where they have like a storage section, and then you can link it to the public, so you're actually accessing anything through your actual storage folder, which isn't on the public layer. It's just all linked, which is kind of nice actually, but you know, we're going to be setting this up as if Vue was its own entity. And again, something that we're going to, you know, be doing later on. So this is just a more comfortable way of working with Vue. So we're going to leave this false. And that's pretty much it for the most part. So if we pull this up, you can see this is what the Laravel is. I set up to-do.test. This is in my hosts file. You don't have to worry about that. It's kind of out of scope for these lessons, but you can see we have, you know, Laravel set up. So we also need to run. So if we go back over to here, go here. So we're going to do yarn. This is going to install everything for us that we kind of missed. Oh, I guess I already did it. Never mind. So everything is running. So Vite is set up. Vitest is set up. We're going to have, we'll probably make our tests for our front end within our JavaScript folder. I personally kind of like having the tests next to my components. So for instance, if I have components, I'll have in here tests. Let me do that too. So what that'll be, you'll have, let's say not that. We'll make it a component called alert.view. And then in our tests file, which this is in the wrong file, but in tests, we can have alert.unit.js or alert.spec.js. We could do, I think there's test.js. Yeah, you can name it pretty much anything you want. It just helps solidify what you're actually doing in it. We're going to make this just called spec.js. That's how we'll have it. So we'll have our alert and then our alert spec. So another thing that I want to do is I want to set up Vite and Vitest with, let's see, I think we do it in here. I want the global globals. True. And is it tests? So I got my S's on the wrong spot. So this should be correct. And then you can, in here, we would have our describe, and we're going to describe our alert. And we're going to do this. So this is how you would set up a normal test for your Vitest, right? And then and whatever you're trying to, you know, figure out what you're testing. Now, you can have multiple describes in the same block. So if you're describing the alert, maybe you want to, you know, describe something else. This will allow you to kind of group things. You could think of it as describing a feature, so the overall, and then you can keep narrowing it down, and then each individual thing that you're trying to test will be, you know, whatever it is you're trying to do. So let's say describe, I don't know, we're going to describe the close button. Close button, right? So here we go, and we can have in here, it closes when the user clicks the close button, right? This is just how you describe what you're trying to do. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a const wrapper equals, oh, that's another thing we're going to need. We're going to need Vue utils, Vue test utils, right? So we're going to be targeting Vue 3, so we want Vue 2 right here. Boop. Copy that. Can't get it easier than that. Paste that in. Enter. Now we have Vue utils, and we're going to want to shallow mount, and we're going to be shallow mounting app alert. So we're going to need to import, import shallow mount from @vue.testutils. And we're going to need to import alert from alert.view. Now for Vite and with Vitest, you're going to want to worry about having this .view. Vite can't automatically figure out what you're using, so it needs to have that ending. It'll figure out like a .js if you leave that off, or a .ts if you're using TypeScript. Actually, speaking of, this should be figured out for. Well, let me rename this. We should be set up for TypeScript. And yeah, we need to, in order for TypeScript to kind of start working, so we're going to need a tsconfig.json, tsconfig.json. And here we can see from our stuff, we have our compiler options. And we're just going to take this. We're just going to plug this in here. Let's take a look at our, yep, there we go. It's actually working right like that. So we have our describe, yeah, and you get all your types out of it. Fantastic, just that one little file is what would do it. So we have a wrapper, right? So we can test, what you should be doing is, maybe we'll create something simple like it is a component. And we can just do const wrapper equals shallow mount alert, and then expect wrapper to be truthy, something along those lines. Again, definitely come back here so we can look at the API stuff, right? So these are all of our tests. Right, so we have that. We have our benchmarks, our describes. So this is what our describes are doing. You can use test. You can use it. Actually, I do think you need test. Maybe we need to be truthy, right? So then we could do expect to be truthy, right? And that's going to be one test. And we have another describe and this one. So I think. Okay, so one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to jump back over to our Vite config, and we're going to be setting up a couple of things for the Vitests to run off of. So let's go take a look at that file. All right, so we have our globals that we set up earlier. Some things that we're going to want to do, we're going to want to exclude. And this is an array of strings. So this is going to be, we don't want our node modules. They have it set up with a couple of stars. I'm not going to do that. How about node modules? We don't care about those. What we do want to include is we're going to have, these are what the tests are. These are the included tests. So this is where it's going to pick up everything that we're trying to test and use that for everything. So this is all going to be within our resources files, our JS, and then in here we're going to do 2 stars for every directory, and then we want to do everything's going to have its own __ tests __, and then we're going to do any directory there too. Actually, it shouldn't be any directory there. It'll just be any test, and then we're going to do we only care about spec. So we're going to do spec.ts. We're going to stick with that. But if you wanted to include other things, like you want a TS or a JS or a JSX, any of those things, you would kind of write it this way. It doesn't matter to us, so I'm just going to revert it and just keep it simple. This is what it would look like for us. But again, if you wanted to have it look at other things, like maybe you want it to be unit, you can add that in. But we only care about spec right now. Perhaps later we'll come back and update this, but this should work for what we need. Another thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to include our environment. Environment. And that's going to be JS DOM. So all we have to do is do yarn add for development JS DOM. So that'll come in, we'll use this, and we have it now. So this is going to be our environment. So that's great. So we have this set up. And if we go back to our test, this should all be kind of ready. There's nothing that we're doing here, so we're just going to do expect false dot to be truthy, right? This is going to fail, obviously, because false is not truthy. It's just to kind of get this going. So we'll do, we're going to have to go to our Vitest, our package. And in this file, we're going to want to add a new script. So we're going to call this test. And I like kind of separating things out. Usually test is like a very broad thing, so we can have several different types of tests running. This will be good for like if we hook up some kind of CI into our project, which we're not going to do. It's a little out of scope for this project, but maybe on down the road we'll try and play around with that. But I like to be kind of verbose about what I'm testing, and what I'm testing are my spec files, right? So spec. And what this is just running Vitest. And that's it. So now we can come down here and we could run yarn, not urn, yarn test. And, test spec. And it's running Vitest, and it's going to go in, it's going to find that file, hopefully. Hopefully we set that up right. And it did, it found our file. So we have one failed test. We had one passing and one failed. And if we scroll up, we're going to see, false to be truthy. Well, let's go start working on that test. So we're not going to worry about that. All right, so let's start writing some tests for this. So what we want to do, let's see. Oh, and also this is what's known as a TDD, right? So it's a test-driven development. And what this really allows us to do is kind of really sketch out how we want to interact with either our app or our APIs and stuff like that. It's kind of fun to kind of play around with how we want to do it. So let's say we want to get an alert within the alert. So we're going to do alert equals wrapper.find, and what are we going to do? Well, the find is pretty much like your query selector, right? There's also a find all. So you have your query select all. We're just looking for one thing here. So this works just like your normal query selector, and you can do anything you want. You can find an anchor tag, you can find a class, you can do an ID of something. That all works. But what I find is I don't really like having pretty much like the layout really kind of used for what I'm testing. This is something that I just recently started doing, and what that means is I like to use like data attributes. So if we look back at our test, we could do like a data attribute for our test ID, and we're going to make it, let's just call it an alert, right? So what this says, like when you're actually working within the actual component, it's special, it's not some arbitrary class that you have there. So you don't want to touch it. It's meant for something. So we're going to find that, and what we want to do is we're going to expect the alert. We're going to expect alert that, well, let's see. Well, we want to see if it is, so in here, it's returning from the wrappers. So this is all the Vue util, test util stuff. And we can see here, there's an item called isVisible. This is on our wrapper. So isVisible. And you can check if visible is true. So we can go back to our test, alert.isVisible to be truthy. That, not less or equal, to be truthy. All right, and then what we want to do is we want to close it, right? So we're going to expect, so this is like our setup stuff, right? This is what we're doing to set up our test, and then we want to act on it. This is our act phase, so we're going to say alert dot. We're going to find something within that called data test ID equals close, right? So this is going to be our close button, and we're going to trigger a click event. So within Vite. And also like Jest and stuff like that. With Vue, I'm not sure if it's Vue test utils, but you can't trigger something normally. You can't hit like a dot click on something. You have to trigger it a special way. So now that we have we're clicking on that close button. So this is our assert phase. So this is our expect alert is visible to be falsy, right? Because we don't want it to be visible anymore. So if we save this, we can see that our tests have failed. We have one passing, which is the one above, where it's just nothing really. And this one, we're saying that the alert is visible, and we're trying to find something is visible on empty DOM wrapper. All right, well, let's go take a look. Well, we haven't done anything. So in here, I have a quick little snippet that I created, but any IDE is going to be able to allow you to make your own snippets. So mine is template or Vue.3 template, and this is just quick. We're using the new script setup within Vue.3 that's new, and it's also going to be TypeScript, right? So we have our view and stuff. Here's our template. So in here we're going to have a div, and we're going to do this first div is going to be like our outer kind of everything that goes on outside of there. It's just our little parent. And then we'll have our div for our data test ID equals alert. Right? So here's our alert. And another thing that we decided to do was we had a div for our data test ID for our close button, right? So now we have these two items, and I'll just make this really quickly times. And times is just, it's going to make the time symbol. It's a nice X. It's a very clean looking X. Very good for these kinds of things. So now we come back over here, and we see that everything's kind of doing stuff. But now things happened. We're able to find that alert. Everything changed. The error that we were hitting changed. So we're expecting true to be falsy. So alert is visible to be falsy. All right, well, let's go back over here. And, well, we're clicking on this, but we're not triggering anything, right? So we need to trigger something. So on click, we're going to say close alert, right? Well, that doesn't exist, so let's go make that. So we need a const close alert. And this is going to be a function, like using arrow functions. And close alert, what that's going to do is, well, we need something that it's going to close. So we need a const, and we're going to reference something. So show alert equals a ref, and that's going to start off as true, right? That's how we decided to start this thing, so let's just make it do that. And when we trigger this, we're going to say show alert.value equals false. And that's everything here. So we can save, and we can see down here it's still failing. The error is still the same, but we're not using this show alert anymore. So we could put this right up on the top here. We could do a v show equals show alert. So if it'll show if this is true, it'll not show if this is false, right? So this seems right. I'm going to go down here. It's still failing. Well, pretty much what we have here is this is we're triggering this, but we're not waiting on anything. So we need to actually wait for this change to happen. So we're going to need an await here, and we're going to say wrapper.vm.next tick. So this is just going to say, all right, after the next time the Vue template kind of does like a little update, we're going to be ready for it. We're waiting for that, and then we're going to start doing something. So with an await, we need to set this function to be an async function. So we're going to set this, and look at that, it's passing. It's perfect. So as you can see, it's actually very easy to set up the Vitest with our new Laravel application. And we saw that we can actually kind of start working in a TDD kind of way, even with front-end tests. I like doing it this way. It kind of lets me experiment with how I want to interact with everything, and it's kind of fun. In the next videos, we're actually going to start with the back end, and we're going to actually start working on the real application. Everything that we did here is just to kind of prove that we're able to run tests and run through a TDD kind of way in order to get the front end tests working. So join me in the next video,
and we'll start doing some PHP stuff. All right. Got to do that YouTube thing. Like and subscribe buttons around the thing. I don't know. Cheers.